We're now recording, yes.
Okay, great. Good evening. Welcome to the January 5th, 2022 meeting of the Needham Board of Health. I'm Rob Partridge, Chair. This open meeting of the Board of Health is being conducted in person and remotely, actually no, just remotely, per the Governor's Executive Order of 3/12/20 and as amended on June 15th, 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The materials for this meeting have been circulated previously and are available on the town website. This meeting is being recorded. Public comment is not anticipated. I will introduce each board member and each participant on the meeting agenda. Please respond by saying yes when your name is called. Ed Cosgrove?
Yes.
Steve Epstein?
Yes.
Kathleen Brown?
Yes.
Christina Matthews?
Yes.
And myself, Rob Partridge. Okay, so we have a 1-hour meeting today. The first half an hour is going to be a mass discussion, which has been generated, with the increasing burden of the Omicron variant. Certainly, some of us have been receiving calls and emails from concerned citizens about whether we should be changing our current stance on mask recommendations. So we have 30 minutes for that.
I wonder if Tiffany or Tim, if either of you have kind of our most recent data.
Yes, Julie will go ahead and present that.
Cool.
Tim, can you make sure she shares her screen? She has access.
You should have access.
Maybe we can start with that, if that's okay.
Idea.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I have some Needham specific data and some overarching state data to share. So let me see if I can move this out of the way. Okay, first and foremost, the percent positivity I think is a great indicator of the situation. You can see for both Massachusetts and Needham specifically, the percent positivity has skyrocketed very recently. You can even look, Needham's most recent percent positivity is 5.35. The previous report was 2.99, so it's increasing pretty quickly. And we've surpassed, where we were about a year ago at 3.95%. The same goes for Massachusetts. I anticipate they will, surpass where they were about a year ago as well. This is a chart that we show on, I think, all of the Board of Health meetings, but I've expanded it a little bit to add some more context. So I've added in the fully vaccinated individuals per capita and the new information that the state has included, which is individuals with booster doses per capita, because I think these factors, may play into the incidence rates or percent positivity that we're seeing in each of these towns or communities, as well as this little mask symbol for the cities and towns that have an indoor mask mandate. So, if you look at, say, in Needham compared to a town like Newton or a town like Norwood that doesn't have a mask mandate currently, you can compare the incidence rates and percent positivity, but also look at, how many individuals that are fully vaccinated, how many individuals have received a booster. And that may explain why certain rates are higher or lower. Looking at Needham's daily case numbers, I wanted to go back to November, about mid-November, to just show that we were on a pretty steady pattern for a while until we got to about mid-December, when the cases started really dramatically increasing and have continued to do so through the new year. I do expect that the case numbers for maybe the end of December and definitely the beginning of January will change. They'll likely increase due to delayed test results coming in. And a more important note is that this does not capture the at-home tests that people are taking. We don't keep track of those unless, of course, they took an at-home test, it became positive, and they went out to seek an official test. There were 728 cases in Maven from December 1st to January 3rd. Again, that number might change. The average age was 32 years. And if you look at the age breakdown, it's less so the older, the 70 to 79 and 80 plus, and more so the 20 to 29 and younger populations that are the majority of the cases. If we look by vaccination status, tried to break it down a little bit further into vaccinated and then sort of the unvaccinated subgroups. So there were 318 cases in vaccinated individuals, and then 98 in unvaccinated 5 to 11-year-olds, 53 in unvaccinated under 5, so not eligible for a vaccine, and 259 in all other ages. My caveat to this being, I think that there's not really a great correlation between, or a great push of information between MIAS and MAVEN. So the immunization information is not necessarily showing up accurately in the reports that I'm pulling. Typically, I would go in and assess all of the unvaccinated individuals in MIAS to figure out if their record isn't complete or, you know, whatever it may be, but there were too many cases to do that this month. Following on that, I did a rough calculation and found that through time, about 2.5% of fully vaccinated Needham individuals have become infected with COVID. Talking a little bit about sequencing, because it's obviously a hot topic, talking about the evolution of primarily Delta cases to primarily Omicron cases. The CDC posts the information on the left and is showing we're always behind because the sequencing information takes so long. But as of their most recent report showing that in our region, we're about 82% Omicron cases. And you can see over time, the purple bar, which is Omicron, steadily increasing. And if you look on the right, this is actually from the Broad Institute, who have been using this technology called M-Carmin, which is a CRISPR-based assay to do a quick, snappy distinction between the variants to sort of make up for all of that time that the sequencing, the whole genome sequencing takes. So the CDC was reporting that, you know, about mid-December, we were around 12% Omicron, whereas the Broad is saying, using this M-Carmin technology, we were primarily in Omicron cases by about mid-December. So I think there's just a lot of unknowns there as we wait for the sequencing data to come in. Looking at Needham cases specifically, about 7%, so 44 out of the 644 reported December cases were sequenced. And again, this number is probably going to change as these sequencing results have 2+ week lag times. The first Omicron case that I found was on December 7th. You can see from the bar graph that we did still primarily have, for what we have currently, Delta cases. But starting on December 16th through the second half of the month, there were 13 out of the 17 sequence cases were Omicron. So it's clear that we're making a shift into Omicron cases. And the state says to assume that cases after December 25th are Omicron. Now to look at some of the general state trends. Obviously, I'm sure we've all seen it. The case totals have been increasing quite rapidly, but you know, something to think about amongst all of the chaos is that the number of deaths are not increasing out of, you know, the capacity that the number of cases are increasing, very thankfully. I know it's tough to see in this top plot, but I just did the deaths in the bottom plot. And obviously it's been increasing over time. We have been continuously adding to the death total, but at a much, much slower rate than this rapid increase to the case totals. Looking at cases broken down by ages over time, obviously you can see the upward trend in basically all of the age groups. But if we want to take a comparison to where we were a year ago, the state didn't break down the age categories in the same way they do now, but we have certainly surpassed where we were in terms of cases for 19 and under, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49. We start equaling out. We're about where we were for the 50 to 59-year-olds. And for 60 and up, we have less cases than we did a year ago. Doing the same for the hospitalization rates. Again, increases in hospitalization rates for many of the age groups. Looking at where we were a year ago, we certainly are exceeding the hospitalization rates for where we were a year ago in quite a few age categories. Again, in the 60-plus-year-olds, that's where we start to see the huge difference, because the hospitalization rates a year ago were astronomical for the 60 to 69, 70 to 79, and 80-plus-year-olds.
Julie, I don't know if we have this breakdown yet, but for hospitalizations, are these hospitalizations due to COVID, i.e.
Yes.
COVID-19 is the primary diagnosis, or are these hospitalizations where COVID was discovered secondarily in the patient?
Okay, yeah, so they don't break that down that far. They just say generically COVID hospitalizations.
Okay, thank you.
Looking at deaths by age, again, the state didn't break it down quite the same way it does now, but it's sort of about equal, a little bit less in some age categories. Again, the big difference is in the 60 and plus year olds, where there are significantly fewer deaths than there were a year ago, which is great. Looking at breakthrough cases, the state posts this data every Tuesday, and currently we're at 3.5% of fully vaccinated individuals who end up getting COVID. 0.08% of those cases end up in hospitalizations, and 0.02% of those cases result in deaths. Looking at that information over time, so they started collecting this information at the end of August, when it really became relevant with the Delta surge. You can see obviously a very dramatic increase in the number of, in the percent of vaccinated individuals who end up with COVID. Also an increase in the percent of those cases which result in hospitalizations and which result in deaths, but certainly to a much, much lesser extent. Still a very small percent of the population.
And this is people with only 2 vaccines, right? Or does that include boosted?
So it does include boosted, but it doesn't differentiate between fully vaccinated and fully vaccinated plus boosted.
Okay.
They haven't broken that down yet, yeah. And the last thing that I wanted to show was the number of vaccinated individuals in hospitals. So you can see that in both instances, there's been an increase in total hospitalizations, and there's also been a slight increase in vaccinated individuals who end up in the hospital. And proportionately, we were at somewhere around, I think, 28% to start, and we're about 35% of the hospitalizations are vaccinated individuals now. So I think that that's something to keep an eye on over time, because, the hope is that we may get cases in vaccinated individuals, but we're hoping that fewer will result in hospitalizations. So that is all of the data that I have. If anyone has any questions or wants me to clarify anything.
Julie, could you go back to the slide with the state and town data with rates and comparing the towns that have mask mandates? There, that one. So it looks like Newton and Brookline have lower average daily incidence rates, but Boston doesn't. And then the other towns are kind of variable.
Yeah, I would say it seems over time that we've been holding at a lower incidence rate and percent positivity than the towns around us, which also don't have mask mandates. But yeah, Newton and Brookline have been consistently lower than us.
Their mandates are in all indoor spaces, but I think Wellesley, Dedham, they have kind of the public building mandate.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
Their numbers are very similar to Newton, right? I mean, the case rates are almost identical.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'd also like to say that I'd be more concerned about the masking if they were in the 30s than in the 56 or the 50s, as that's only 15 people per 100,000. That's a difference there. So to me, that doesn't show much of a change because we're in 100,000 people, not just, these aren't specific town numbers.
And I think their numbers look lower than ours, but they've been over the past couple of weeks increasing at the same rate that we've been increasing.
Do you have any data on hospitalization rates of children with COVID?
Yes. I actually have another presentation that focused just on hospitalization rates of children. So I show it in this end. Oops.
Just while you're looking for that, because one of the things that I'm seeing a lot, and I don't know if Steve has the same experience, but I'm seeing far more kids with COVID than I ever saw during this pandemic. And some of them are reasonably ill. Some of them are quite ill. So I just wanted to sort of include that as part of our discussion, because although we may not want to do a townwide mask mandate, we may want to consider it for places where children are present, such as the library. And as we all know, it's currently required in schools.
Mhm. And we last month at our last meeting, we were also talking about checking in with town council regarding, because Ed had brought up the senior center.
And bring it up again.
Right. I mean, well, no, just saying that, if it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't to me just quite make sense to think of just the senior center or just the library or, kind of targeting spots like this if we were going to do it.
We did receive requests from the staff, the directors and the boards of the aging services and the library with strong interest in a mask requirement for their spaces. They think that the nature of the interaction they have, longer term interactions rather than maybe the sort of transactions at town hall for paying a bill or getting a permit, is one concern. Sort of the nature of the populations they serve. The library obviously has a very active children's room. The senior center obviously serves a senior population. So those two divisions had indicated that they'd be interested in a mask requirement and asked the board to consider it.
I also checked in with Cheryl Sabara after our last meeting and asked about doing it for a specific population. But I did only ask for the seniors, and she said as they're more susceptible, that would be okay for the board to do. But of course, she defers to council, our town council.
I mean, I don't know how many people have experience in a senior center, but there's a population of people that basically spend their entire day up there. And they're all in the, I would bet 70 to 85 range. And it just seems to me that it's still one of the more vulnerable populations in town, even looking at the statistics in terms of disease and hospitalizations, breakthroughs, etc. And so it's my feeling that we need to institute a mask mandate in the senior center.
And then what type of mask? Because cloth masks just aren't cutting it anymore, not with Omicron.
Minimum clinical.
And who's providing those?
I think that we would have to, we would ask if people bring their own, but if they don't, we should have them available.
Do we have that capability in the town to make those available?
We could certainly,
Actual medical ones, probably I can't order that many, no. The ones that have been donated that we're not sure what the extent are, I probably have plenty of those, but I don't actually know that those are official medical ones.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking N95s. I mean, that would be ideal, but those are still in pretty short supply. But, you know, a standard surgical mask is still a lot better than a cloth mask.
So my only concern there is if we're talking about a population that needs somewhere to go to feel comfortable and welcome and those kind of things, if they don't have access to one and we can't provide them with one, are we creating more of a barrier in the mental health area of judgment and concern for that specific population?
And
There
I
has
agree.
to-
I'm worried about the barriers to participating. I mean, I don't know who's, I mean, the people that are there all day, they're wearing masks or they're not. And then the other people are worried that some are and some aren't. I don't really understand the concern, number one. And yeah, like just any old mask. We know people are just yanking it out of their coat pocket and throwing it on their face. It's been on the back seat of their car, wherever. So is it very effective? I don't know. So I think if we're going to, yeah, I mean, I think providing them, you know, a lot of places, you walk into a ski lodge, they have them right at the door now. So seems like we should be able to find something, but I don't, you know,
There has-
spending
There has to be
town money.
funding. There has to be funding available for that. And I admit I have not gone to the senior center for about 2 weeks, but up until the time I had not been there, you almost never saw anyone with a mask on.
And who's so then the people going are not wearing masks, they're concerned, or some in that population is
There are
concerned,
some
or it's the
people in the-
staff.
Yeah, there are people in the population who are concerned enough about mask wearing that they're not going to the
Mhm.
senior center because people aren't wearing masks.
Or because that maybe there's not the comfort that a mandate even provides. you
Right.
know, yes.
the center is at
Exactly.
about half capacity, roughly half capacity. If we think back to December 2019, it was very hard to ever find a parking spot at the center at the
Yeah, I
Heights.
know.
and Now you can almost always find one. Programs are at 50 to 60% of their normal capacity.
Because you know, part of the issue here, I think, you put a mask mandate in. Now you have, you know, people wearing cloth masks, which honestly don't do an awful lot against Omicron. Are you providing just a false sense of security, or are you providing no sense of security? Are those same people going to say, look, these people are here, but they're with cloth masks, I'm not comfortable, I'm still not going to come in? In which case, those people should probably take it amongst themselves to wear N95s, which offer them the best protection. And, you know, then it doesn't really matter if you're around somebody who's even not wearing a mask. I mean, it'd be better if they did, but if you're wearing an N95, you've got pretty good protection yourself. I don't think we're in a position to offer N95s around, but you see my point here, I think, that just having a mask mandate is really a false sense of security unless you provide a mask that's adequate. And, you know, again, I mean, I think that, you know, the best protection we still have is getting boosted. The data that we've been seeing, at least, Rob, and I actually reached out to Ed Altman, who's running the ED in Needham. So they break down into 3 groups, basically. The unvaccinated are the ones who are getting admitted into the ICU. The fully vaccinated and boosted are coming in and being discharged home. And then it's the vaccinated and not boosted that are either coming in with some hypoxia. They are seeing some cases like that. And they're also seeing probably about half of the COVID admissions there. And I just saw this from New York as well earlier today, are where COVID is being found incidentally. So they're not being admitted because of COVID-19. They're being admitted for something else, and they're found to, oh, by the way, you also have COVID. And then there's a huge debate over whether or not that's a comorbidity that's going to affect their hospital stay or not. And I think we just don't have the data on that. But, you know, I keep coming back to, I think we need to be concerned about hospitalizations and deaths. And, you know, the ones who are boosted aren't. So I think we need to make a real big push into boosting. And I see we're at about 50% currently for boosting in Needham, which is pretty good compared to our surrounding towns from what I remember from that slide you just had up. But we still need to make more of a push for that. I'm fine with having, mask mandate in public buildings for a couple of reasons. One, I think, temporarily it does prevent some of the spread. I think it protects the staff more than it protects the patrons, particularly if they're wearing good masks. But we have to have good masks if we're going to do that. And there was I had one other thought that I was going to bring on to that. But basically, it's not a panacea. I think one of the things that we should be thinking about is whether or not we need to have like vaccinated and boosted, passports, basically. I mean, Boston has done that, is my understanding, correct? Have to be vaccinated to go into certain particular businesses. That, I think, may offer the best protection that we have. The mask mandates that we saw in that slide are kind of all over the map. You've got, Newton and Brookline, who are kind of in, one area, and then you've got Boston that's, considerably different. But they're considerably different populations as well. And who knows what type of mask that those populations are wearing, and that may contribute to some of the differences. So I'll stop there, but those were a couple of my thoughts about where we go with Omicron. Big push in boosters. I could certainly support, for publicly funded buildings having a mask mandate. I still think, for people who are vaccinated and boosted, it is a recommendation. It's a strong recommendation that people wear a good mask. You need to up your game on your mask. Minimum is, surgical quality mask, preferably an N95 if it's available to you. And that's kind of where I would see this at this point.
So in terms of our recommendation, our current recommendation actually doesn't seem to match the state recommendation, which is that at least everybody who goes into a building should, if you're not at home, you should have a mask on. And that's not, as far as our previous discussion was concerned over email and everything last week, that's not what we've actually been saying. That's not the message from the health department.
So I think we strongly recommended you wear a mask indoors.
If you are immunocompromised or haven't been vaccinated, but the state is recommending it for all people, vaccinated, immunocompromised or not. So we need to at least change our recommendation to that for everyone.
Yes, definitely. And I
Yeah,
think
I'll agree with that.
these masks are welcome. Even the wording of that, I feel like is so just kind of very loose. I think, we had talked about maybe 3-4 months ago issuing kind of an advisory, and I hoped it would even have, Board of Health, Needham Public Health, whatever on there. But, I just yesterday when I was at town hall, this face masks are welcome is up there. And it's not, I think, the right message nor the right tone.
So
Not for
sorry to
current
interrupt.
conditions.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you're hearing.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is 6:30. We do have a hearing that's scheduled. I don't know, maybe if the board wants to continue after the Hungry Coyote hearing is done, they could continue some of the COVID discussion. If that's okay with you, Mr. Chair, I think we do want to make sure we start.
If that's fine with all the other members, that's fine with me. And I think we're pretty close to coming up with some consensus, so we can sit on it for 30 more minutes and then finish that discussion. Okay, so just want to, are there all the other participants here?
There are 18 attendees. So what I might do, and we have Town Council Chris Heap here as well. I might, Julie, thank you very much for your presentation. That was very helpful. I'm going to move you back to a guest.
Thank you, Julie.
And I see that we have Francisco, and I'm going to promote him to panelist.
I think the one that says Picada Leona, that's his wife.
Great.
Okay. So we have everybody here?
I believe so. We have Francisco and Leona. I don't know if there's anyone else associated with them that they would want me to promote to panelists, but if so, please let me know.
Okay, all right. Thank you to everyone who has joined. The next 30 minutes on the Board of Health agenda is a public hearing about the Hungry Coyote Food Establishment Emergency Suspension Order that has been issued by the Needham Health Department. So I'm going to open the public hearing now. Our concern is the ongoing food safety, health, and sanitation issues at the Hungry Coyote that represent a threat to the public health of the residents of Needham and others who buy food there. The purpose of this hearing is an opportunity for the restaurant to be heard by the Board of Health and Health Department and to explain why the order should be withdrawn. I would like to say that I would like to include in this hearing the emergency suspension order, the hearing packet, and the timeline of events which have been previously distributed. Town Council, if you have anything to add to what I've just said, please say so. Otherwise, I believe Mr. Mendez is here to represent the restaurants, and I'd like to recognize him, and you may give your response to this order.
Nothing further from me. I think that was a great recitation of how we got here and the purpose of the hearing that we're conducting now. Thank you.
Mr. Mendez.
Hello, everybody. My name is Francisco Mendez. I run and operate the everyday, day-to-day operations of the Hungry Coyote. Let me give you a little background on myself. I've been doing this for 22 years.
Wow.
Professionally cooking for restaurants all around Massachusetts. Started in Waltham, moved to Brockton, Whitman, Stoughton, and then I came to Needham 3 years ago. I can assure all of you that my food is 100% healthy, safety, and delicious. I understand that it's been going on for the last 2 years, but in ongoing violations that I've been inherited or I've been mistakenly done. I can say that the last couple of weeks, I've been 2.5 weeks, I've been doing everything by the book, according to them, according to the health department. I've been taking temperatures in the morning, temperatures at night, cleaning logs, temperature logs, tagging every single item, and pretty much keep doing what I've been doing for the last 22 years. And I can assure you that no one in Needham is in danger. That's pretty much what I had to say. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. Do we have any questions from the board for Mr. Mendez?
I do have one question, Mr. Mendez. You mentioned that you've been doing this for 22 years.
Yeah.
As a cook, how many years of experience do you have actually running a restaurant as manager?
As a manager, 22 years, my friend. I built
Managing for 22 years?
Managing for 22 years. In the kitchen for 22 years. Every single procedure from the food, from going to Restaurant Depot, purchasing the food, to bringing it to the restaurant, processing the food, and then at the end selling it. At the end of the night, cleaning and storing everything away. Yes.
Okay,
I build the restaurants.
Well, I'll ask. I mean, we obviously want to support our local businesses, and I feel like our staff has really gone out of their way to support you. And you know, it's a great addition to our community, but there are rules and they have to be followed. And we don't put them in place. Actually, the state puts them in place. We need to enforce them. And so I feel like we've seen this pattern of, I'll do it. I understand places are short-staffed. There's a lot of difficulty. But I do think we need to be assured that you will continue to keep, you know, it sounded a little chaotic, some of the reports. And so that you have a plan in place to, you know, put things right. I mean, I'm a fan, you know, I've purchased there, all of that. So I want to make sure, but I've also seen a little bit of the chaos as well as a customer. So I want to make sure you've got a plan. That's all.
Well, I do have a plan, and some of the chaos is beyond my control. I cannot be babysitting for everybody needed. I'm not everybody's parent here. So the Needham parents drop off the kids, sometimes by hundreds. They're all hanging out here. That's not, yes, I set up a gate so no one can go behind the bar. There's a gate now. But, you know, kids will be kids. And if you don't, I mean, they purchase stuff here also, so I cannot kick them out. And that's been one of the problems. Even the Subway next door, the employee actually kicked a kid and went to jail for it. I'm not gonna do that. But all the stuff that you've seen on the reports is been very, very unfair to me and my employees, because there was never a chance from the health department to come in at 11 o'clock a day, any day, and says, Francisco, I know you're having a lot of trouble. I know you're having a lot of issues. Let's work together so you can be better. Showing up at 7:30 on Friday night is not going to help us. Showing up on Sunday at 3 in the afternoon is not going to help us. We never had a chance to discuss and go back and forth on the stuff that I work on restaurants for the last 22 years. Is the Needham people better than Dorchester people, or better than Waltham, or better than Rockland or Stoughton? The stuff that you're asking me to do is if you come in at 7 o'clock at night, you're gonna find violations of any restaurants. And if you continue to do it, of course you're gonna find more items that you think that I'm not doing. And if I show you the process, I can show all of you. I go to Restaurant Depot every other day because I got small storage. I serve about 250 meals a day. Never in 22 years, yes, people can call the health department, complain about my trash, complain about getting sick, complain about the kids running around, complain about kids being behind the bar. That's all out of my power. What is in my power is make sure the food, the utensils get cleaned right, the food gets processed perfectly, and at the end of the day, putting stuff away the right way. And believe me, no one in 22 years had ever gotten sick from my store. And that's I can assure you that that's not going to happen. Moving forward, of course, I'm going to do everything you ask me. Of course, and if you would have given me a little bit more time, we're gonna have a time to discuss, and we're gonna have a plan together, and I would have fixed all the issues that were in front of us.
Francisco, sorry, you just mentioned that you put in a gate.
Yeah, there's a bar.
When was that put in?
That was the first week of December.
First week of December. Okay.
Because there was a phone call to the health department. The kids were going behind the bar and grabbing water. So at that point, I set up a gate.
All right. So, as much as you said that you cannot control these children,
well, I do control them, but when I step away to take a break or everything, and they see me as the authority figure, they probably get out of hand. I mean, when people call on the kids, I'm talking about they calling on kids that are hanging out at their store. They're not calling on my kids, they're calling on regular customers' kids.
I think we're more concerned about the safety of the food here, and having patrons or others in the food preparation areas who don't belong there is a problem. And
no, but that never happened. That never happened. I don't know where you come in with that. I'm saying kids go behind the bar there's no food prep there.
So when we say behind the bar, and maybe this is our staff because it's of the folks going in and around. I'm not sure if this wasn't a priority area why we have to block it off, and so I'm a little bit confused here.
I don't know. I don't know either. The health department called me. Tara called me and says people call me and they say that the kids going behind the bar. Can you set up a gate? And I did. I've been doing everything that they asked me to do. Some of the things are really very, very far from what you need for food processing. Like,
No.
take it. Go ahead.
I understand. I mean, first I want some clearance, but the complaints of children behind the counter have stemmed from 2019. I mean, it's been going on now for 2 years, and I think it was only the threat that we might have to revoke a permit that, in the last month, finally we have a solution to this after 2 years' time. But
No. The 2 years ago, excuse me, 2 years ago, there was a complaint about my daughter being behind the counter charging people as a worker, and somebody complained about that, and she's never done it before. These other kids they got no relation to me. The first complaint back in 19 was my daughter working behind working. She's 9 years old, like trying to be helpful behind the counter. Is it Spanish? I know you shouldn't do it in Spanish community. You teach your kids to work, but she was there for an hour, half an hour, no like 8 hour work. So, nothing like that. That was the first complaint. The second complaint was just random kids.
So,
Yeah,
Francisco, having reviewed the packet and the things that the health department is concerned about, it seems like there are things that have come up more than once, and it also seems that you acknowledge that there are some violations that need to be remedied, and my understanding is that the things that need to be done are spelled out on the order. And
Right. No, I work. I'm done. Every single thing on the order has been done, and I continue to check the temperature in the morning. I keep log of cleaning, keep log of temperatures. Actually, we're gonna have the CPR test for all my employees on Monday, so we're gonna have the certificate also. Go ahead.
Okay, no, because that also there were, besides the issues of food temperature and storage and so on, there were issues about training, and you acknowledged the things that needed to be corrected when you signed a memorandum of understanding, I think in November.
Well,
but
I signed that paper not even knowing what it was. Diana told me, she says, just sign it. It's a thing that because we're working together. I didn't even know what it was, to be honest with you.
Okay, I guess. The point that we want to make is that we want you to be able to continue to serve food, and people enjoy your restaurant and it's good food, but there are violations that we have recognized that are not made by us. They're not promulgated by us. It's the state, and it's public health.
It's actually by the it's federal government. It's not the state.
Okay, but it's to protect public health, which is our role. And basically these are things that for us to issue you a permit, they need to be fixed.
They all fits right now.
I mean, they weren't at the time that the order was issued. And, in the MOU, it's quite clear what the health department has repeatedly been asking you to do. So it's kind of confusing to hear you say that they've all been fixed, because clearly they weren't, and that's why the order was issued. And
right.
This took me almost, I went through every part of this history. It honestly took me about 2 to 3 hours to review this closely. And we spent a lot of time talking about kids and the chaos in the store, but the real issue here is food safety and ensuring, like Rob said, that we keep our population healthy. And you were mentioning, the differences in these various towns, and is Needham any better? Needham is not any better in our population, but we have excellent environmental health staff here. And we hold all of our restaurants, accountable in the same way that you have been. And, I was looking at one day in November, there was a dog in the kitchen, and there's a photograph of a dog in the kitchen. That is absolutely unacceptable. And
that's a mistake.
Yes.
That's a mistake. That's a mistake.
Okay. And then that same day, the temperatures of raw meat, raw beef at 60 degrees, raw chicken at 59 degrees, raw shrimp at 54 degrees, no soap at the hand sinks. I mean, these are real basic measures in food prep, especially, for someone who's been doing this for decades, that this can't be the way that we continue. And it then becomes our responsibility as the Board of Health. It is our role to safeguard the health of this population. And so when we find that these basic standards are not being met repeatedly, this is not just one time or two times. We're talking about, especially over the past 2 years, there have been many violations. And I've been on this board for 3 years, and this is the first time I've attended a hearing like this. So this is quite rare. And it is quite rare that
well, this is the rarest. If you send your sell your field officer to my store at 7:30 at night, or you send your field person to go check my store at 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon, when the restaurant is packed and I'm going back and forth, she's gonna find a lot of violations. I understand. None of them.
Please.
Yes.
We have the right as health agents and agents of the Board of Health to go into a restaurant, to inspect a restaurant. We do not have to schedule anything. It is by law. We can go in unannounced at any point. We're going to find whatever we're going to find. We have always supported you explaining. Even if we don't explain it there, we give you the report that shows everything that we see with pictures, so you know that we're not making up something. We have it documented. We give the chance to talk to you, because I know I've talked to you many times after inspections. Even if I didn't do the inspection myself, if Monica did an inspection, I've spoken to you about the violations, and we have offered so many resources. I've given you the list of food safety trainers various times. I spent time and highlighted people who specifically train in Spanish, because I know that staff members don't necessarily speak English. I speak Spanish myself. When I come in, that's why I've talked to your staff. Yo hablo español. I have the language barrier. That is not a problem. Like, we have provided so many resources. To say that we're not supporting you is
never
offensive.
No one, neither you or any of the field health department people, ever, never. You and her never once come in on the helpful way and teach me, or even if you think that I don't know what I'm doing, never once you came and says, Francisco, we're gonna work together, we're gonna help you, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. No, you walk in, you walk around looking for violations and walk out. And if you say, this is the report and this is what you can get help, that's it. And that's the truth. I've been here a long time, 3 years almost in Needham. I live in Needham. I understand.
Do that with you in other towns?
Well, in Broadbent, this guy used to come in. No, I'm not asking you to give me a call and come in, clean up the restaurant. That's not what I want to do. But come in at some normal time when you know you can actually talk to me and help me out. And say, listen, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. Can you fix it? I give you so much time. Not just, in the month of December, you probably called me and emailed me 20 times. Like, I'm about to go to the hospital because my attention is so much.
That I found wrong with the violation of the piece of code.
And that is because she is trying to help you to keep your store open. I mean, it's unbelievable to me when I read through this, how much interaction that Diana and Tara and Monica have had with you. And to be honest, I was wondering, what, other work they might not be doing because of the amount of time they have spent on this particular issue. They have a ton of other work to do. We have a lot of other establishments that require oversight, and they cannot expend this amount of time, hand-holding this process. We have to have a commitment that you are going to continue, your work, keep this business open in a way that meets these basic requirements.
And, the idea that if they come in at some, inconvenient time, if a patron is there having food, that food has to be safe. If you're open, they're going to come in and be sure. We can't have the restaurant be safe only some of the time, and other times, just because it's busy, it's not quite as safe. That just doesn't fly. I'm sorry.
So you think purposely I will put the safety of my customers, which I live by. Restaurants close because customers don't come back. And my first priority is the customers. Make sure they leave happy and they leave. In my entire life, I would never put anybody's danger. It's always say the violations that you find, they were fine whether there were mistakes or whether there was never one of my employees or I will leave food hanging outside for 4 hours to become bad food. That's not what we do. You know, we make sure that we cook the beans today and we sell them tomorrow, the next day. We cook rice every day. I go to Restaurant Depot 5 times a week. I buy 100 pounds of chicken. I sell it the next day. I buy one more. It's no,
Mr.
there's
Mendez,
no
I'm
way
just
ever I'm going to get
reflecting
anybody
on
sick.
your statement when you said, sure, if they come in at certain times, yes, there are going to be violations that they're going to find. That's not acceptable.
Of course, if you know what the violations is? A fencing being blocked by anything. That's a violation.
Minor
Is that-
violations like that are one thing, but we're talking numerous violations, some of which are serious over a pattern of years.
what is
And
the
additionally,
most
I
serious
haven't-
violation you think I done?
Cooling logs, he claimed earlier cooling logs were submitted.
Raw chicken stored above ready
Haven't-
foods. That was repeat, yeah.
But I
Well,
have
we-
the
yeah.
logs that we have requested in the MOU have not a single one has been submitted to the health department as required by that document.
Can I talk? Hello?
Yes, Leona, you can.
I'm here to support Francisco. I'm working here. I started working here December, in January 1st. Tara called me to say things about what happened to the restaurant, and I promised to her I'm back now to help Francisco because no a lot of staff for work. And she called me 2 times. 2 times she called me Sunday too to say if I promised to her to fix things in here, and I say I give you my promise to help Francisco. This is my job. I have 5 kids. I work in here. I work in here for 2 years. For the pandemic, I leave. I have my kids in my house. And I'm very sad when this happened. Diana, ella habla español. Yo hablo español también. Ella no ha tratado de ayudarnos. And I'm talking to you, Diana. You no help us. That's not true. My kids now is bullying in the school. That you guys put my kids in this situation. And I'm feeling very, very sad with this. My kids don't want to go to the school with the father trying to do something wrong. You know how many texts I got from my kids, and the people say things in the school, and it's not true. And the city and the health department are not trying to help us. And this is my job. This is the place I give your food to my kids, and you not fair, guys. No fair. I don't know if Francisco is mad to me if I'm talk because I see my kids fight with Francisco, my older son, fight for these things. It's not true. And you, Diana, no nos han ayudado. No nos han ayudado. Ustedes dijeron que nos iban a ayudar y no nos han ayudado. I remember Monica come one day in here and she told me she have a friend, a Spanish friend, can train the people in here, and Francisco need to pay. Doesn't matter, he can pay. No, a friend she have to come to train us guys. This is very sad. A lot of people, the kids come to eat in here every day, and see this happen to Francisco. Everybody love Francisco. Everybody love Hungry Coyote. I'm sorry, but I'm very upset. This happened with my family and me. I'm sick with this. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Leona. Mr.
So-
Chair, I did want to draw your attention to the fact that it is approaching 7 o'clock. I know that there, is a lot to discuss here. I think one of the points that the health department staff have tried to make is We enjoy working with, Francisco and Leona. We think they are good people, and we think they're very hardworking. We don't have a grudge against Hungry Coyote. We want them to be able to operate in a safe manner. We want them to comply with the food code. And our hope is that we can work with them to make sure that they come into compliance. The sort of purpose today was to go through some of the questions about whether they disputed any of the facts that were in the inspection reports. And I think there is some dispute from Francisco on some of those points. But I think the health department stands by its position and the work of its staff to document the inspections. The town made an investment 3 years ago to buy a new inspection software that was much cleaner, produced digital reports, included photographs. And this is part of the reason we wanted to be able to provide detailed reports to our establishments on violations and where they can correct them. We think that was a lot more helpful than sort of handwritten notes. And I think the board can see from the packet that there's an extensive documentation of all of the work that has been done with this establishment.
Thanks, Tim. I think the other thing that I just want to kind of bring into the end here is that, at the moment, the Hungry Coyote does not have a permit to operate in Needham and is still open for business selling food.
Yeah,
which is
I wasn't gonna. Excuse me, I wasn't gonna let you guys ruin my reputation.
Mr. Mendez, let me just finish. That's a very serious violation. And, as all of the board members have said, our job is to protect the health of the public. And, I understand that you may dispute some of the things that have been said, but, these are trained professionals that have identified problems and identified things that you need to do to correct them. And, we can't, given that circumstance, until these things are fixed, we can't allow a food establishment to continue to operate without a permit. And, there are further steps that we would have to take. And, those are steps that we really don't want to have to take. Those are legal steps.
Right. I was going to bring my lawyer today, but he was too busy tonight. I did not close the restaurant because that will really ruin my personal reputation. Tara said to me, I am personally endangering the people of Needham. I'm an imminent threat to the health of Needham. I am a danger to Needham. I don't know how she came up with this and I close. If people have at least the two choices to hear me and says, nobody's going to read the paper on the door. That's first of all, nobody's going to read the paper on the door. I took it on personally, no against the health department. No, I don't know how you can tell my business. No one, I don't think any of you ever work in a restaurant 80 hours a week like I do, 100 hours a week like I do. I process the food. When you tell me that I suck, that I'm going to put people in danger, that I'm not good, that's personal to me. That's more than just violations. Out of those, you can have 100 violations, the ones we have. I know them all. I know them all. That doesn't not give you the right to shut me down by the law. You can say whatever you want. You're gonna give me a warning. You're gonna give me, okay, by this week I want this stuff. Listen, she asked me to get a gasket for a door. The refrigerator was working perfectly fine. One of the violations is a gasket for a door that was working. Another violation, because I don't write down the temperatures, none of these violations constitute you thinking that I'm going to get people sick and calling me out and says, you're endangering the people on Needham. That right there, that's why I didn't close. By Monday, I can bring to Diana all the stuff that she needs, the logs, the cleaning log, the temperature log, the CPR, and the gasket is on. Those are the 4 items that I think they want. And we go from there. I don't know what else to say.
All right. At this point, I'm going to ask, do any other board members have any further questions of Mr. Mendez or his wife?
I would just like to say to Leona, as a mom, it pains me to hear you say that, your children are experiencing, challenges with other kids in the community. And this is not our intention, of course. Our intention is to ensure that, the restaurant is safe and open, and to work with you all in this. And so, you will continue working with our environmental health staff to ensure that, we can do this well. And we want to see you succeed. Francisco, 2-3 years ago, I heard you tell your story at Temple Beth Shalom. You participated in the International Institute Suitcase Stories. I was there in the audience. I heard you tell your story. And so I really connected with that. I want to see, this establishment do well. We've eaten there many times before, and we really do wish you well, and want to see you open and succeeding.
Well, thank you. I don't know how.
Gracias. Thank you for you understand me. And my position now is why Tara called me, and I promised to Tara come back to work. I'm back to work, and I promised to her, Tara, and come back to work and everything. She called me 2 times. She talked to me. I called her one night crying when I see this happen in my family, and she say, okay, show me you do the things I ask. And if the health department come tomorrow and see the restaurant, the health department can see the things Tara want or Diana want, everything is good, and here the things she wanted. If Francisco closed the restaurant, this is very, very, very bad for everybody. Please, Diana, yo te pido de favor que tú nos ayudes como latinos que somos, y que nos ayudes y que trabajes con nosotros para nosotros poder estar como ustedes quieren. Gracias, Cristina.
Gracias.
Just to translate that really quick, it's just she's asking me to continue to help her, because again, want to reiterate the sentiment of the board, because I agree with them. It's not that we want to see you close. We want to work together. We all have the same goal. We don't want to shut down anyone just to shut them down. We want to make sure everyone is safe, and we want you in business. That's why we gave the whole list, MOU, the list of everything to do. Hey, here's these trainers so that your staff knows what they're doing. That was us helping. We will continue to help you. We're here to support you. We're not here against you.
In the federal health advisory, health departments are there, and the sole purpose of being there is to help restaurants become better restaurants. Health departments don't shut down restaurants for violations like this, and that's where you guys are wrong. That's why I didn't close. I didn't close because I understand if there was people with COVID right here, I took 2 weeks off. It's not about the money. It's about this. You told me that I'm not good. Personally, I'm not doing a good job. I'm the one who's responsible for all this. Not my employees, it's me. You told me you're not good. You literally you're endangering the health of the people of Needham. The stuff that you asked me to do, and I go back to I know we have a better health department than other towns. I know we are richer. I know we are different people here in Needham. I've lived here for 13 years. I know, but some of the stuff that you asked me to do are very low on the importance. Like the food that we prepared today. I know you want me to put a tag on, and I'm putting a tag on it. Everyday food. I never in my life I understood that somebody like you guys, all the board of health, would shut me down for this violation. Every one of those violations you can see. Yeah, I in 3 years, somehow I got there about, and that's what we're gonna go to court to see. All those violations are there, real, or they somehow put there by one of the environmental somehow to make me look like this. Is it a real, or is it make you look like this bad guy? And you know what? I'm not a bad guy. I'm a nice guy. I love my customers. I love what I do for a living. The reason I didn't close, and I apologize if anybody feel that I did something wrong against anybody. I didn't. It's just I'm right. You don't close restaurants for those reasons. You don't. The health department is like an 11 reasons restaurants close. The 11. And if it was true, we're gonna have to go to court and figure it out, because I'm not gonna close. I'm gonna show you, and I assure you, I've been doing every single thing that Diana and anybody else has me to do. Keep it log, put in tags on stuff, make sure nobody takes the chicken space, because if you put tomatoes there, it might be wrong. If you use this chicken space by putting another thing, it doesn't harm anything. Storage is important, but if you're gonna move it within an hour, it's not gonna stay there forever. It's not gonna live there. And plus, my food doesn't sit there for 7 days like other restaurants. I move my food every other day. I go to Restaurant Depot, like I say, 5-6 times a week. And thank you for your time. And I hope we can fix this problem soon.
We certainly hope so too. I'm just going to ask Todd, did you have anything that you wanted to say? I believe you received a phone call today.
Yeah, so right before the hearing, I guess.
No, listen. Don't bring my son into this. Please.
Okay, well, he wanted me to mention.
Don't mention it. You wanted me to hear. You wanted to hear what my 16-year-old daughter said to me. She was crying, completely crying. It says, "What are the people going to think of us? What are the people going to think of me? I've been cooking my entire life, and all of a sudden, I become the devil. All of a sudden, I don't know how to cook because these violations I gather over the last 3 years have been piling up. None of the stuff goes to enough reason for you to put what you did on the door. If you would have said, I'll give you a month more to take care of it, that would have been fine with me. I'll give you 1 more month, I take care of all these issues, and I'll make sure you get it, I get it fixed. But no, you say you're the devil and you're gonna get people sick. And that's what people are telling my daughter. My daughter was crying so much today because she said, what are people gonna think of me? You're my father, and people say you're gonna get people sick. Am I gonna get anybody sick?
So Francisco, I hear you, and we're really.
Don't bring my son into this.
So again, the MOU stated everything very clearly at the beginning of December that you had signed with us. We went through it with multiple emails with you. Diana and Monica visited you at least once a week to go through those MOU items. You were not showing us enough improvement on each inspection. I know you brought in training the couple weeks ago, and Diana went out last Monday and saw repeat violations again. So it's just something that we just need to keep working on long-term. You need to hire a food safety consultant to work with your employees on a long-term.
No. I'm not going to hire no.
This is what we're recommending.
If I decide not to write down the temperatures, you're going to close me down? If I decide I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to write down the temperatures like you said.
This has been proven though to help other restaurants, Francisco, that were in the same place as you at the beginning of December. They brought in a long-term consultant and they worked with them and trained on hands-on training throughout every week that they do their spot checks. And we've seen significant improvement, and it's really helped out these other restaurants. They've thanked us for having us give them these suggestions.
I'm not going to thank you for giving the suggestions. You told me, you're telling me to get somebody to come and train me every week because I don't know what I'm doing.
It's not just you, it's your staff.
I'm in charge of everything.
So that's what we're recommending. And then that will help, secure that this long-term training will now make sure that the new employees that come on will be trained as we go, and that these issues that we keep seeing repeat violations on will get improved. And that's our goal, for a long-term improvement, so that we don't have to keep going in and writing up the same items. That's all. So we're hoping you can.
Well, I'm not going to hire a company to come here and teach me every week. I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. I'm gonna show you on Monday. I'm gonna bring a book. I'm gonna bring the logs I've been doing. I'm gonna bring you the CPR certificates for all my employees. I'm not gonna hire a company to teach me how to do my job. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna do that. I got 3 people certified. Me, my wife, and Genaro. They're all certified, and I got allergy certification. On next Tuesday, I'm gonna get TIP certified. And Monday, I'm gonna get a CPR certified. I'm not hiring a company to come here and teach me how to boil beans or how to storage food or how to do this. I'm not going to do that.
All right. Before we close the hearing, Chris, do you have anything that you have to add?
Nothing. No questions for me to the restaurant. But I'm happy to walk the board. I know this is a new hearing for the board. I'm happy to walk the board through procedure from here and the options that are available to it, if that would be helpful.
Okay, maybe you can do that quickly.
So, as you said at the beginning of the hearing, the purpose of, when the health division issues an order of this type, the restaurant is entitled to a hearing within 3 days of receipt of the order. So that's why we've held the hearing this evening. And the purpose of the hearing is to allow the restaurant to explain or to show cause why the order should be either modified or withdrawn. So I think having heard the testimony tonight, the board's options are to sustain the order as it currently exists, to modify it in some way, or to lift it. And that's that. I think those are the options available to the board. Depending upon what the board does with respect to that, to the order that is currently in place, I think we probably also want to have a conversation about next steps in terms of any enforcement that might need to follow from the board's vote. But I think the immediate question for the board, having concluded the testimonial part of the hearing, is to determine whether the summary suspension order should be sustained, modified, or lifted. And I'm happy to answer any questions that any of the board members might have.
One question I do have, and I don't know if this is a question for you, Chris, or perhaps for Tim or Tara. What modifications are possible here? This kind of seems like an all or nothing type of order.
The board certainly has discretion. I think we believe that the staff from the health department laid out clearly the steps that need to take to get back into compliance. I think there is the challenge of continuing to operate without a permit, which is a serious instance of non-compliance. But the board could choose to implement, to delay the order. The board could choose to modify it. The board could, the board has some discretion, but I think I don't have a ton of suggestions on how it would modify it. Mr. Chair, if you would take a vote to conclude the hearing, and then I will move Francisco and Leona back to attendees. And then when you can kind of proceed with next steps.
Okay, do I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Sorry, that vote should be by roll call.
Roll call.
Okay, as I call your name, please vote on that motion. Ed Cosgrove,
Yes.
Kathleen Brown,
Yes.
Christina Matthews,
Yes.
Steve Epstein,
Yes.
and the chair is yes. Okay, so the hearing is now closed.
Great, thank you. So as Chris laid out, the board has the opportunity to sustain the finding the health department had, to dismiss the finding, so to reinstate the permit, or to modify it. The board does have some discretion on that, but I don't have a suggestion right now on the best way to proceed. Tara and Diana, and I know there's some disagreement with Francisco, but Tara and Diana are meticulous and very detail oriented, and they worked hard to lay out a path for Hungry Coyote to come into compliance with the food code. I think, unfortunately, now there are steps Francisco needs to take, and I hope that he will to come into compliance. I don't have a suggestion for modifying it. I really would think it would be an up or down vote from the board on whether it wants to sustain the suspension or not.
Diana, could you just remind us on the last MOU, what is remaining? So I know the logs weren't created. What else is remaining there?
I'll have to pull it up. Just
Okay.
I think they only have one safe serve trained staff member right now.
yeah, the one that was mentioned in the meeting, that person, I don't know if he just confused the names, because that Gennaro person, I'm fairly certain left the establishment. That was the one that we had some issues regarding the legitimacy of him taking the exam. Because at one inspection, I had spoken to him, asked him about the exam, and he told me he hadn't taken an exam, so it was unclear what happened in that situation.
he mentioned during the hearing that the things that were outlined on the order, he has done, if I didn't mishear him. And I'm wondering, have any of those things on the list been addressed?
I know he still had some expired certifications he hadn't gotten into us.
We still don't have the choke saver, which that alone wouldn't grant a permit, because having more than 25 seats by law, you need to have at least one person choke saver certified. Their choke saver had expired June 15th of 21. So that piece is missing. So even without the violations, I technically couldn't issue them a permit without that certification being handed in.
Could they modify to just take out or something? I mean, are there other things that we could do or something, you know?
I guess for that situation, could modify the number of seats to be under 25.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at the order. So again, we need at least 2 serve safe food protection managers, and ideally those people should be on site at all times. That's what we wanted. And that's by code that there should be at least one person on site at all times who has that training. And with the Massachusetts code, they ask for 1 person. They need to sufficiently train the staff. So even if they're not present, if I ask questions of whoever is there, whoever is the manager, they should be able to answer all the food safety questions that I have as well. So we were asking for that. We were asking for a deep clean. We're asking for cleaning logs, temperature logs. Pest control was supposed to be contracted to be conducted every other week. The last time that I did go, I didn't see, they were having issues with flies. Now we'll give it to them that issue has been improved upon immensely, because the last time I went, I didn't see any evidence of flies there. And that's very common coming in on vegetables and fruit. Like sometimes that isn't preventable. But we also asked for sanitizer logs for the 3-bay sink whenever they set up the sink. I saw an email that just came in that they submitted the choke saver, so I can verify to see if that's there. Need to make sure additional staff have the allergy training as well, because we only received 1 certificate of that allergy training. We wanted them to have a qualified outside food safety consultant kind of reassess, almost doing like another plan review, because what we're noticing is that there's not sufficient space for cold holding. So again, the storage issues is probably because they don't have enough space, or the way that it's organized, it's not enough for them to properly store their food correctly. So like the last one, I found avocados stored underneath containers of raw meat. So that's a cross-contamination concern right there.
So Diana, just as you're going through all of this, I'm wondering if you could delineate a little bit the difference between what's ideal and what's the minimum requirement. Because if, it's one thing if they're not meeting an ideal. It's another thing if they're not meeting a minimum requirement.
Right. So definitely we'll need the allergy training. Choke saver just came in. Want to make sure that things are stored in the correct order. So if I do a re-inspection, I shouldn't be finding ready to eat foods or, food that's not going to be cooked. So like vegetables, I shouldn't be finding those stored underneath meats, raw meats. What else? Making sure that there's a serve safe manager available at all times, and just making sure that staff has, basic food safety training. We offered food safety training for free for all our establishments in November, every Monday in November. I can go through the list to double check. I didn't confirm whether or not they were there for the trainings, but we did offer trainings for everybody on those basics of food safety. They're all available on YouTube as well at any point, because the intention was, with the high turnover of these restaurants, there's going to be new staff. So we've asked people to share those videos with their new staff. So that's basic training right then and there.
In your opinion, how long would it take to complete the minimum requirements for safe opening?
I mean, I feel like if they shut down for a day or two and really got in there, cleaned and rearranged everything, it shouldn't take incredibly long. It should only take a few days. But I think requiring them to shut down to the public, because obviously when they're working, they're working and not able to focus on fixing those issues. So I think at least a day or two would be enough to do the deep clean, rearrange everything, get that in order. I don't know if Tara, if you have a different opinion.
Well, I spoke to Leona, and it's interesting, she didn't really mention it on the call, but that, you know, when I mentioned the ongoing food training, she was open to that idea, and she would appreciate Pedro to come back in to retrain staff, because she knows the new staff are in there and that he's been so helpful. She couldn't give me enough good words about Pedro and the services that he was offering to them. So I was kind of taken back when Francisco was not going there, but he could also help them assess their refrigeration and verify whether or not he needed an additional unit to maintain the raw food items so that he didn't have to store them on top of the ready to eat, you know, and things like that. So those are the things that I had talked with Leona about on how we could go forward with this. And that wouldn't take long. We just have to get on Pedro's schedule.
Right. And in the past too, like I discussed, like obviously with COVID, they've had less customers, but if they start picking up more customers, like if they have the bar more open, now those kegs are going into the walk-in, so they have even less space for food. So I recommended them getting another fridge so that they can move that out of that space and make sure they have sufficient refrigeration.
One of the things in the past, some restaurants, and it seemed like from Francisco's perspective, it was more a question of pride, but some restaurants have, given the challenges with COVID, been concerned about the cost of bringing in sort of an outside expert to give them technical assistance. In the past, the board has asked the health department, and we have provided those services for free. That's certainly something we'd be happy to do again, because again, we don't want the restaurant to be closed. We want them to be a safe food service establishment that is in compliance. So that's certainly something we could offer. Again, we can't force them to accept it, but we could offer it.
I think that makes sense. We should definitely do that. I mean, the restaurants are strapped, so I think, yeah, if we can support him that way, and him not, hopefully doesn't see it as a threat, but a help. Is this Pedro, is he able to do that kind of all-encompassing effort?
We can ask, but the company has done, same company helped us with Masala Art, that they had come in, did audits, so that took the pressure off of us having to come in and do those re-inspections, have this third party come in, do a similar inspection report, but they would come in unannounced as well. A little bit more frequent than us going in. I think it was like every couple of weeks that they went into Masala Art. But that company they have the ability to do that. I don't know Pedro specifically. I know he's been chosen because he speaks Spanish and it's more helpful that way. I'm sure that's something that we can discuss with the burger food safety, if anything.
That would be great. You need a Spanish language person. I mean,
it sounds to me like all of us are, and so I mean, I might even put this as a motion, that we're going to sustain the order, but I think we need to work kind of as a parallel track. So track one is we sustain the order, and whatever enforcement track we need to do, we get that rolling as a backup. But the first and foremost is to get this restaurant up to safe code and get them reopened. And whatever assistance that we can offer and suggest, I mean, I agree it's going to be up to them whether or not they accept what we can offer them. But they need to meet the basic minimum requirements. That's fair to the public. That's fair to every other restaurateur and establishment in our town and in our state. I mean, we're enforcing state code here, and I don't think that we can not enforce the state code.
That's correct. Yeah, we have to.
Agreed. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we can get these safe changes to happen with the cooperation of the restaurant owner. We don't want to be in the position of having to come back every week for another meeting.
One, I think we mentioned that we have to rely on them to comply. I think one of the most serious things, and Rob, you had noted this, was continuing to operate without a permit in defiance of the closure order. That's a serious violation that carries fairly substantial fines. I guess one of the hopes potentially is that the board has never been interested in making money through fines. If Francisco was interested in trying to comply, the board has the option of choosing, if he does comply, to forgive fines. I wouldn't want to make that decision right now, but that's something the board could consider if they are making a good faith effort to comply. It could say, the fact that you've accumulated $2,100 in fines is not something that we care to enforce, and we're going to forgive that cost.
Okay. So I guess other comments on Steve's suggestion of the two parallel tracks.
So it has to be closed. What does that mean?
Well, no, I think, our role here is to just determine whether we're gonna, as a board, sustain the order, which has already been done. Are we gonna sustain that? Are we gonna modify it? Or are we going to rescind it? That's what we're discussing now.
Can I just add one comment, Mr. Chair? I think if it, to the extent the board does determine that the order should be sustained, I think, what the timing of next steps, I think will be important to discuss as well, in terms of the restaurant currently operating without a permit, and whether how we want to time the next steps in terms of moving forward with enforcement of that order after the sustain it, which could involve going to court and seeking some additional remedies to get the restaurant closed, which is what the order required them to do in the first place.
I mean, based on Steve's initial recommendation and what you've just said, I think that we need to sustain the order, but we would allow, based on what I've heard, the remainder of the week to come into compliance with the minimum standards that would be required to operate a safe restaurant. And if those things are not met by the following week, then we would pursue further steps at the court.
I think that's a reasonable compromise.
Sorry, just to be clear, so that if the board sustained the order, it would say, okay, we're going to give you time to cooperate. We're not going to pursue a court order, presuming you are still closed, though, because right now they're operating in defiance of the closure order.
Yes, no, that's the case. The restaurant would not be able to operate because that is in defiance of the order. The order sustained, they don't operate. They take the next 3 days to fix these issues. And then once they're fixed, we'd be happy to issue them another permit. And if not, then, we would have to pursue the further steps that we are required to do as a board.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, what's going to happen, right? I mean, the same that's been happening. So then what does that mean?
Well, again, I think it's a dual path, right? So we take whatever steps we need to begin the legal process, or whatever process is necessary. But that does not mean that we stop working to get the restaurant reopened, right? So now, if they continue to operate in defiance, we may decide we're not going to waive the fines. I mean, it's a slap on the wrist. I mean, we've never been really interested in that, but that might be the only, token that we have, because, we're not going to get them shut down in a couple of days. And it's not our intention to shut them down anyway. We kind of want to just get them back up and running. But it's going to take a few days to do that. And it's really going to take their attention, as Diana and Tara both pointed out, to get that done. And that's going to be hard to do when you're running a restaurant at the same time. Right. But I don't think if they're going to continue to operate, I don't see that we should be delaying the legal process. That's going to take a while to happen, and just relying on goodwill, which clearly we would not have if they're continuing to operate in defiance of an order, just that doesn't sit well with me. I mean, I think we're just delaying the inevitable. I'm
And
open
just
to
to-
suggestions, Kathleen. Nobody wants to shut them down.
It's terrible. I know it, but
Terrible
it's,
situation.
I mean, this list is, yeah, I agree. I know.
Chris, you look like you were going to say something.
No, I guess I just wanted to make sure I'd made this sufficiently clear that there are, I think, at least 2 remedies available to the board that we could be pursuing going forward. One is fines, daily fines, and 2 is an injunction from court ordering them to shut down in compliance with the order. So it's, if we've ordered that it happened last weekend and it hasn't, we can and the board sustains the order tonight. The next step would be to go to court. If I'm hearing the board correctly, and I think this is a reasonable approach, those steps, if the board votes to sustain the order, those steps will follow. And we should be taking the steps to get ready to do both of those things. If the restaurant hasn't addressed everything in the order by next week. Is that a decent recitation of next steps?
I think so. I mean, I think basically we're giving them the opportunity given that the order has been issued, the violation that the continue to operate has happened, we're giving them the opportunity the remainder of this week to fix these things. And to allow them to do that, because we'd like them to continue to operate. We want them to continue to be a business in our town. But, we need to make it clear that we will pursue next week an injunction with the court if we're not brought up, if the restaurant's not brought into compliance.
Right. So here, this might be your 2 stages then. All right. So ideally, they kind of shut down and we clean it and everything gets back to normal in a couple of days. If they decide to continue to operate, we continue to fine them daily, but at the same time, we continue to work with them to try to get things going. But if they're continuing to operate, we fine them. All right. If they still haven't come into compliance by the end of next week and are continuing to operate, then we go to court injunction. Is that pretty clear? I mean, I think that's very, very graduated. Basically, we don't want to go to court, but we also don't want you operating, so we got to do something.
I gotta find this consultant, so it's a Wednesday, so let's see if we can get somebody on board fast.
Yeah, Diana, you had mentioned one of the outstanding items was that allergy training. I mean, is that something that they could schedule in the next few days?
You can literally do it tonight online. It's a video that you watch and pay $10 to the state and you get a certificate instantly.
Okay. Okay.
That's not a barrier, really.
Okay.
I do think, I agree. I think these next steps sound reasonable. And I hope that they will comply.
Okay. Can we, would somebody be able to tie this all together in a motion? I'm looking at you, Steve.
All right. So I will
You basically said it. So
So I will move first that we sustain the suspension order. Okay, so so they are operating without a permit. Second, that we continue, that should they defy the order, that we fine them on a daily basis until such time as they comply with the order, or they meet the minimum requirements such that they regain their permit, in which case the order is going to be rescinded anyway. All right. Should they fail to come into compliance within, by the end of this week or by the beginning of next week, if we can pick a date, that at that point we pursue a court injunction to shut the restaurant down. So that
That makes sense.
That gives them a few days to actually get the place shipshape.
Okay, and maybe we should be specific about the date at which we would expect all these things are done and we would go to court. So yes, it is, we've only got Thursday and Friday this week. Should we say by next Wednesday, which gives 4 business days to get these minimum criteria done?
Is that more than enough time, Diana and Tara, based on your observations?
I think so. I was even
More
gonna say,
business days than that.
if we ended up doing, I mean, if they're on the weekend, if we ended up doing the inspection Monday where Tara and I are both in town, that we could do a joint inspection. But Wednesday is also reasonable.
Okay. So does everyone on the board feel that Wednesday is a reasonable end date for the motion that Steve has made? Or should we? From what I've heard, it seems like that would be reasonable, but
Yeah, I think so.
okay. Okay. Can we have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, and by roll call vote, all in favor, say aye. Ed,
Yes, aye.
Christina,
Yes,
Kathleen,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and the chair is yes. Okay, so the motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, I know that was sort of a very intense discussion. I really appreciate how professional Tara and Diana and Monica, our staff, is. They're very well trained. They're very well credentialed. They take their jobs very seriously. So I know it was a little bit heated, but I want to say that some of the things that Francisco implied are just not true. We have a very professional staff, and we're very lucky to have them.
I support that.
I certainly do as well, and I know that this has been a difficult situation for a little while now, and I want to say that I certainly appreciate all of the efforts of everybody in the public health department to keep not only this restaurant in compliance, but all the other ones as well.
yes, thank you so much. I appreciate you. The one other thought I had, which, I just want to put out there is, I mean, it's so clear that now kind of the trust and communication in these relationships is frayed, and in thinking about, how we move forward too. If he does continue to operate here in town, just keep in mind how we might bridge that.
Yeah, I like the third party idea, might help to put a little buffer between town staff, the same faces he's been seeing, so that may help.
We also have a new part-time inspector hired.
It's good.
Okay. So any further discussion on the hearing? Okay. Hearing none, I guess we'll move back to our original discussion about masks and see if we can wrap this up. So I guess the way that I feel like we sort of came together before we broke was that we would, as a board, as a health department, we would recommend that individuals going into public spaces should be wearing masks regardless of their vaccination status, their health status, and that we would further recommend that those be either surgical type masks, if possible, KN95 masks, and that we would require them in public buildings, especially in buildings where children will be expected to be present, such as the library. And I guess then the question is, do we include the senior center?
I say yes.
It's a public place. Isn't it?
Wait, I feel like this discussion just changed from what we said before. Now you're saying put one in all the municipal buildings? Or you're just saying strongly recommend? I'm confused.
No, strongly recommend in all buildings,
Okay.
but we would mandate in all public buildings.
Municipal.
Sorry, municipal buildings, excuse me.
Didn't we just have a discussion about the senior center and that you would hand out masks and it seems like a different conversation than we had an hour ago.
We would require masks, but have masks available for people who don't have one.
I didn't think we were sure we could do that, did we?
I think we're sure we could provide something. We have to be sure that we can provide a good quality mask. And I think that will take some time to double check whether we can get those supplies or how quickly we can get those supplies. I do think it would be, if we were doing it, for example, for the library and the senior center, that's one thing. If we're adding all other municipal buildings, that makes that a little more challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could talk about sensitive groups, right? Elderly and unvaccinated children. Is that the focus?
Yeah, I think, well, potentially all children, but we know that there's still some folks in the 5 to 11-year-old age bracket who aren't vaccinated or aren't fully vaccinated.
Right. If we have to ration supplies of masks, we could, preferentially send them to those areas. So, Rob, we'd provide the masks, as available, with priority to sensitive groups.
And the expectation would be that people would bring their own masks.
So certainly we got a request from the staff and from the board at the senior center and from the director, the staff, and the board of the library. We haven't had a similar request from, for example, the town manager or the select board about the public works building, the town hall. So I haven't sort of talked about that with them. The board is within its authority to certainly require in all municipal buildings. I do wonder if there would be value in some consultation with the select board and the town manager on some of those other buildings.
Or should we just specifically mention just municipal buildings where children will be present?
Children and elders.
And seniors.
So that would be going back to a sort of requirement for CAF in the library and youth programs, but not in a strong recommendation for everything else. Is that right? Or
yeah.
I see that we do have a member of the select board who's an attendee. Not that they can speak for the select board, but their input might be useful.
We actually technically have two. I believe both Mr. Matthews and Mr. Keene are there.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
I don't know if they're willing to be called upon. We could try to promote them to panelists, and they could raise their hand if they're willing to be called upon, or
okay.
We'd be happy to promote them. But I'll wait to see if they want to raise their hand.
Fair enough.
Can I just put this out there also, at this point where we see, kind of hospitalizations rising, community spread increasing, more cases cropping up in the schools, how do folks feel about maybe for the next month an indoor mask mandate in all public places in the town?
I think our vaccination rate is so high, and I think the mask wearing is already so high, and mask mandates have not really been effective, right? It's mostly community input or social influence that is encouraging people to wear masks. People who are concerned about their exposures can wear a high-performing mask. Seems.
I have to agree to some degree. It's about death and hospitalizations, right? And when we look at the hospitalizations, half of these are, because of COVID, and half of them are something else where they happen to find COVID. So when you really look at the hospitalization rate, it's probably, for like COVID related illness, it's probably about half of what they've been reporting. Now, half of a lot is still a lot, don't get me wrong. But I don't know that that's any worse than what we were seeing before. Whether Omicron has just, increased the number of people who are incidentally found to have COVID. So that's what I'm not sure about. But vaccinations, I know CDC is discussing this, but whether or not we consider fully vaccinated to be boosted, because that's really making the difference for the hospitalization. But, the Needham Hospital is getting overwhelmed regardless how you look at it. And the best thing that we can do to prevent the hospitalizations is vaccinations and boosters. It's not masks. Masks will help, but the best thing we can do is vaccinations and boosters. And we still only have 50% of our population boosted. And for that matter, remember the hospital's catchment area now is including all of Norwood and, Norwood Hospital's previous catchment area. So a lot of those hospitalizations are not even our residents.
I do think that one of the challenges with a mandate for sort of all buildings is just the limitation on staff time. We don't have the staff, as we've talked about, kind of the lengths we go to in some areas to help people. We don't have the staff to enforce it. The police aren't in a position to enforce mask mandates. And then sort of the enforcement falls to the 17-year-old or the 20-year-old behind the counter. And I think that's really not a winning position for them. I did talk to Amy Halson, who's the town's manager for economic development. She had not heard much from businesses. She'd heard from one business that said, is the town thinking about doing a mask mandate? Is the state going to do one? She hadn't heard too much from anyone else. I think there's some sentiment that we had heard from businesses that it would be much simpler rather than them requiring patrons to wear masks if the town just said or the state just said you have to. There were some other businesses who really didn't want their staff to have to enforce a mask mandate. They felt that was putting their staff in a not winnable position. So I think there's still some division amongst businesses on what is the ideal course for them.
Yeah, no, I think the enforcement is a big issue, and I think that's one of the reasons I don't think that a mask mandate for the whole town in all buildings would be a good idea.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
and I
agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons we haven't done it up until this point. And I think just from the hearing, seeing that, the person who responds to a lot of these requests is actually Diana. And, she would be pulled away from other work, in order to do that. That's a concern.
We certainly do get email inquiries from the public saying, we would like a mask mandate. I think one of my concerns is, if we get, 3 emails a week saying we want a mask mandate, we're going to get those same 3 emails if those people happen to go into Sudbury Farms and someone has their mask down. Because we have no ability to enforce it, those same people are going to be very frustrated if we have a mandate in place that we have no ability to enforce.
Yeah, I think that a regulation that you can't enforce is a joke. But I do think that a targeted mask mandate to at minimum certain municipal buildings, such as the library and the senior center, is warranted just because of the population served. Perhaps it would be reasonable to just make it all municipal buildings.
Well, that was my feeling in calling for that exactly, Ed, is that makes it much easier. But I agree, talking with the town manager and the select board might be helpful in getting some counsel in that area.
Would the board consider, since there was a request from the library and the senior center, that it could require masks for those locations and for any other locations where there are, youth or senior programming, but that it would defer on other municipal buildings until we have a chance to have the town manager or the select board have a discussion with them?
I would support that.
Yeah, I think so. I could agree with that.
Yep, I would support that too. And I think the other bit of this discussion is that, this would, we would be following this very closely. We're in the middle of the Omicron spike right now, but it is anticipated that it is going to drop in the next few weeks. We don't know when, but we can revisit it frequently rather than have a 3-month length of this mandate.
Yeah, I think if we were to follow the statistics, and when the peak begins to decline, we definitely can revisit this. Maybe we should put that in there.
Well, I mean, then what level is okay, right? So it's not going to
I
be
know.
when you're here and then you're here. You want it to be down here. I don't know. I thought, like we just talked about, getting people to feel less interested in going to the senior center. I don't know. Maybe the people that are worried about masks outnumber the people that will now not want to go because of masks. I don't know. So
My honest thing is I think it's 50-50.
and now
Well,
staff has to enforce it, but they're willing to, it sounds like. Sorry, go ahead, Tiffany.
No, I was just going to say, and to some point, all the data we have is not going to be a perfect picture of what we see anymore because of so many home tests and the inability to obtain a PCR test. The pushing with these home tests changes the way the data is, and whatever infection rate we have and incident rate we currently have is probably twice as high with the appearance of home tests being used so often.
I do think, and I'm sympathetic as Kathleen, you know that my preference, I think, would be for no indoor mask mandate. I do think that the director of the library and the staff at the senior center had sort of, there potentially is a forced protection argument for why a mask mandate might be good, because there are people who are in there for a longer period of time. It isn't a brief interaction. I know the library director mentioned, and they have a fairly large staff, but they have 7 people that are in active cancer treatment, and she's very concerned about those people and their interactions with the public. So there's potentially a forced protection argument to be made for some of the municipal buildings. I do think I have the question of what are the sort of tipping points and triggers for when we would pull that back.
I mean, it used to be, it was very easy. It was an under 5% positivity rate. We're just over that right now. The other part of this, as I said, I think we've got to push on boosters. We got to get that messaging out. We're only at 50%.
Yes, although as you noted, Steve, that is the highest in all of those communities we track. They know that
It is. We're doing good, but this department, kudos to all of you, got
Especially
Needham
Tiffany.
very, very quickly, over 90%. So we can do it again.
Yeah. I do think we can, get it in the weekly news bulletins. We can do more messaging.
And there's a real advantage now that you don't, if you're a close contact, if you're boosted, you don't have to quarantine. You can go about your business, but if you are not boosted, you're treated like you're unvaccinated, right? It's yet another, that's my selling point for the young 25-year-olds to get a booster. So it's another advantage. I guess these 2 buildings want it. So that would be why shall I say, give in? But yeah, I do think if there are people who are immune compromised working in the library, they should be wearing KN95s or KF94s. That they're widely available on Amazon with FDA certifications and all of that. So a better fitting mask is more important probably for them than for whatever someone is wearing walking in. So.
Yeah, no, I think that should be part of our recommendation. Okay. All right. Would anybody like to make a motion on the masks?
Okay. I would move that we support the request of the senior center staff and the library to require masks in both facilities. And that's at this point, we strongly recommend that masks be used in other municipal buildings.
Or strongly recommended in all public buildings.
Or all municipal public buildings, yes.
I think that communication, whatever our our strong recommendation or advisory or whatever you want to call it, that can be a separate piece to this, so we can move forward with the
Yeah,
library.
that's like the real ask here is, do we put where's the mandate? So, we're talking about mandate at library and senior center only.
With
Yeah, I'd
possibly
support that separating the two.
right. And also where there are programs for seniors or youth, right? So like, for example, the Rosemary Recreation Complex, if they're having a kids program or a senior exercise, we would say the same thing there. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll make that motion then.
All right, now I'll second that.
Okay. By roll call vote, all in favor, say aye. Kathleen?
Aye.
Aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Rob is aye. Okay. So that motion carries. And then, so just separately, we will have a recommendation then, a strong recommendation that all people wear masks to protect themselves and others while inside public buildings.
Right.
Which is
so not just municipal.
right. No, all buildings. That makes us
All
consistent with what the state is recommending now, the State Department of Health.
Okay.
Publicly accessible or something. I mean, I wanted to make it sound like, when you're in your apartment.
So you're making that a motion, Rob?
No,
Yes.
it's just a communication. No.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And I
I
think,
mean, there's more to it, right? So we're going to strongly recommend masks in all publicly accessible buildings, that those masks be of high quality, basically surgical grade or better, which will include, your N95s, your KF94s, all in the like, right? And a strong recommendation that everybody eligible for a booster receive one as soon as possible. Do we have supplies, Tim, to boost, like running a booster clinic in town?
So we have been running booster clinics for
Right.
months now. So yes,
Nobody's
they
been
will
showing
continue.
up. Nobody's been showing up though, right? Or
Oh,
have
no, we do 400 to 500 a week.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's
I have
great.
people going to the one on Friday and then there's one on Tuesday.
One on Friday, I'm not gonna lie, may be canceled depending on the weather, but we will try our best, but I can't promise.
Okay.
And
Yeah, so
then
that's
I
what-
share the Pell Meds and Birds Hill have, they have, you can line up and get one. I mean, those are really great resources for people. I don't know if
So
I'm
let's
supposed to
just
say
let
that.
people know when those are and that it's available, and
Yeah.
strongly encourage people to get that.
Yeah.
and so this communication should replace, I think, the face masks are welcome sign that's posted around town.
So that was a town management thing, so can chat with them about changing them and adjusting them to what they would like, or you can just do a separate one.
Or they would just say face masks recommended.
Yeah.
For the Board of Health.
Just ask for clarification. So public buildings, meaning the restaurants as well, or like those businesses as well?
Yeah, strongly recommended for all sort of indoor
Strongly
public
recommended,
spaces.
but not mandated.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Or wear the mask to your table thing. Yeah, we're not doing that.
That's why I wanted to clarify, because I'm like, do I have to send something to the
Between
restaurant?
bites. Yeah, we're not. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so we will put into writing that emergency order, and then we will do some additional messaging about the strongly required high quality masks, surgical or grade or better, and strong recommendation for everyone to get boosted and linked to, public health department, Pell Med, Birds Hill, and other pharmacies that are offering COVID boosters.
All right, great.
Good.
Okay. I think we've reached the end, unless anybody has anything else. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Kathleen, aye.
Ed, aye.
Okay,
Great. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time this evening.
thank you.
Thanks.
you.
Vince.
Thank you.